Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Paula Quesada, and I'm joined by my co-host, Christian Farrell. We are Rebelize Change. We're excited to bring you our very first guest. In this episode, we are diving deeper into self-care and personal development.
Welcome, everyone. We're excited to introduce our first guest, Alex Cordovi, founder of Moon Alchemy. Alex is a queer astrologer, trauma-informed yoga teacher, and natural nurturer. She's a Capricorn Rising, Pisces Moon, and Aries Sun. With a bachelor's in psychology and a master's in management and urban policy, Alex's academic background is impressive. However, her heart has always been drawn to a deeper understanding of the self and the stars. Over the past 15 years, Alex has dedicated herself to studying yoga, psychology, and astrology. In June 2019, she began offering chart readings, illuminating the intricate relationships between celestial bodies and human experiences. Alex has hosted New Moon Women's Circles, creating a space for deep personal and interpersonal exploration, provided individual birth chart consultations, and led astrology workshops for both adults and children. Her work aims to help people understand and embody the universe's language. We're excited to share this time and space with Alex, and we hope that everyone takes something really valuable from our conversation today. So let's get started.
Hi, Alex. Welcome. For those that don't know, we've known Alex for a while now, so we're excited to be sharing this time with her. So Alex, tell us about your journey and how you founded Moon Alchemy.
Well, I feel like I can't talk about Moon Alchemy unless I talk about trauma.
Okay.
Start there.
Let's start there.
I got to go like big picture and then I'm going to get personal.
Perfect.
So, I kind of want to preface before I get into that because I know the word trauma, like we hear that and we're like, oh, no, right? And I'm not going to talk about like big trauma. I'm not going to talk about PTSD. I'm not getting into any of that. I just kind of want to talk about what trauma means and collective trauma in regards to my journey and how I experience it and how I interpret it. So my personal definition of trauma is basically like anything that overwhelms the nervous system and can't be resolved like immediately. And if you think about that, I mean, that could be like so many things and things that maybe we think are like small. You know, like I think of, I can go back to when I was 3 years old and I remember the day that my parents dropped me off at school for the first time. And I'm like, oh, my abandonment wound, they abandoned me, right? Like that, that's a trauma right there. Or like somebody pushed you on the playground or, with good intention, like maybe you're having a big emotion and your parent or a friend or a teacher or whoever tells you like, oh, you're fine. Everything's going to be fine. Like, don't worry about it. That's like an invalidation of your experience and your feeling. And it's like, okay, it's not okay for me to feel. So I'm going to just brush that aside, So like all of that, that's how I think of trauma. So like, I feel like kind of bringing it in a little bit more to my journey. I think of like collective and societal trauma. And like, I think a lot of us like know about this and have experienced this, especially, like the silent generation and the boomers and the Gen Xers and the millennials, like grind culture, hustle culture. Like, I'm going to grind through school. I'm going to get my degree. I'm going to work my ass off. So are we allowed to curse?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. I'm like, wait.
Oh, yeah, please do. Okay. Yeah. This is, I love this because I'm like, I just want to interrupt and be like, yes. Because I'm feeling all of this. Anyway, I'm sorry. Go on.
No, please. Again, I'm going to like grind till I'm 65 and like, then I'm going to live my life and be happy. And, I mean, like all of us have our own like relationship with that, but that was kind of my relationship with that. And that felt very true for me, I think, all the way up to like my mid-20s. And, when I left, I had gone to New York for 2 years. That's how like Paul and I connected. And then I came back and I worked for the city of Miami again. I love how like that's how we connected, how we knew each other. Anyway, so I came back thinking I was going to go like the political route with the city, and like I was working in economic development, and then I started seeing a little bit more of like what everybody talks about, like this dark side of government, and I'm like, should have listened to them.
You triggered a memory because you said
Uh-huh.
city of Miami. And I mean, you and I know that place has some history.
Oh
Which
yeah. So thinking that, I can still be idealistic, but I think I was more idealistic in my 20s and when I was younger, thinking I want to change the lives of people and do all this great work. So I'm going to go the political route. And then like, I'm kind of there. I'm not even fully in. And I'm like, oh no, this is not how I'm going to do it. Not going to do it the dirty way. I'm not going to sell my soul along the way to try to change lives. So then I'm like, okay, I just did like all this work. I got this master's degree in order to do this. And like, now I'm not going to do this. And I'm like, what now? So I found a nonprofit that I really connected with, and I started working at a nonprofit. And, in a job where I felt like I could just leave work at home and still felt like I was contributing to something meaningful, while I figured out, okay, what's next? And, I had always kind of been like into yoga and practicing yoga and this and that. And I had gotten deeper into like personal development and working on myself. I was going to therapy, all of this stuff. And I was like, maybe I should just become a yoga teacher. Why not? So I did. Like I got my certification. And then once I got my certification, a few months later, I got a job at Lululemon. I was already teaching. And I was like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. So I left the nonprofit. I started doing this. And even as a yoga teacher, I mean, like that grind was still like, and it still lives in me. For anybody who knows, I'm a Capricorn Rising. If you know what that means, like I'm workaholic. It's just, I can't help it. So I'm like grind as a yoga teacher, very depleted all the time. I was probably working like 60-hour weeks and working at Lululemon and driving all over Miami and all of that. And I'm here thinking like, and this is like another layer. This is like millennial Gen Z stuff of like their own trauma that I'm part of millennials. So like, I'm gonna become this like social media yoga teacher sensation, and like this is what I'm gonna do. And I, again, very idealistic, very like thinking too big for my own capacity, and grind, and that like never manifested, which is fine. I'm okay with it. So then I'm like, okay, it's time to switch gears. Like this isn't working either. So I switched gears and I started integrating astrology a little bit more into my yoga teaching. I was still teaching yoga, and I was focusing also on women's circles. I started doing women's circles in June of 2019. And then, like that started to like build a lot of traction pretty quickly. And then like pandemic hits, and then there was still some traction. Like it was still successful. I was able to translate that work to the virtual space. And then like once July, I guess it's like almost a year later, like July of 2020, it just like fell off. Like people were still connecting with me and I was still doing readings, but like the women's circle space just wasn't happening. So I was like, okay, switch gears again. What am I gonna do? So then I was just like, I gotta do something. I have to make money. Like I can't not make money. So I was managing a yoga studio, and then that kind of led me, once I started managing the yoga studio, I'm like, I just gotta let go. Like whatever happens, happens. I can't like grip and like force things. So that led me to become like an elementary school teacher. And again, I was still doing readings. Like this whole time, I'm still doing readings, and I still do readings now, but I was teaching like I had an astrology club for kids, and like that was so much fun. And I did some workshops for adults. Like I didn't do too many. I did a couple. I was kind of like experimenting, and like that was great. And then, I still like, even though being an elementary school teacher, it was like exactly what I needed in that moment in time. Like it taught me that I am not, at least not in this moment in time, I am not cut out for entrepreneurialism as my sole form of income. Like I can't. My nervous system can't handle it. I need resources that come from somebody else. You know,
Yeah.
like I need that. So once I kind of like figured that out, and I was actually like doing really well, like physically, my nervous system, financially, much better and better and better, like every year. And now I'm actually back at Lululemon. I'm one of the managers of the store. And you know, like I get to have that. And it's a job that like I love and it fulfills me and it's wonderful and it pushes me to grow in ways that like I don't loathe. You know, I might feel challenged, but I don't loathe it. And I still get to do astrology and I still get to like that practice. So I think like what Moon Alchemy is just like it's just this passion project. It's like I almost think of like it's the orchid in the garden. Like I can't do this to it. You know, I
Yeah. Oh, that's a beautiful analogy. I like
to
that.
it. Like I
Yeah.
can water the grass. Okay, this is my Lululemon. Like, and I can water the trees. And like, this is easy. I can't overwater any of this stuff.
Exactly.
But the
Oh, I
orchid,
love
like, I
that.
can't do
Yeah.
that.
I love that because it's true. Orchids are just so
So,
delicate, right? So fickle. Too much sun, too much water, it's done. So it's just the right amount. Wow, that's great. That's
yeah.
great. Excellent. So one of the things, and I know that, so as it relates to self-care, then, right? What are the major concepts that you incorporate like in your offerings right now?
Right. Well, I think like, you know, like as a space holder and a facilitator, I feel like it's important for the client to feel some sense of autonomy. You know, I feel like, and I say this because of my trauma informed background, which I know we're going to talk about later, but
Mm-hmm.
you know, the person has to feel like they have some sense of autonomy in the space. Like, sure, you're coming to me because I'm like the expert, you know, and you want to learn more about yourself and your life through the lens of astrology. I might have the knowledge and the tools. And like if something doesn't resonate with you, that's fine. Like take what works for you and leave the rest. And I think that's just it's important to like cultivate that within a space. And I feel like if you're able to have that dialogue and conversation with a client before like getting into the work,
Mm-hmm.
that will support them in feeling that way throughout the experience and also like pausing and asking questions. And I also think it's important to like basically say like, you know, you don't have to censor yourself here. Like I'm not cancel culture. I don't believe in that. Like if you say the wrong thing, if it comes out the wrong way, fuck it.
No
Say it.
judgment. Yeah.
No judgment at
Come
all.
as yourself authentically. I
Yes.
love that. Yeah.
Yes.
Wow.
So anyway, yeah, I feel like that's super important too. And just letting them know, like, I'm going to pause, I'm going to ask you questions. And like, you don't have to answer any of the questions. It's just like to create some dialogue. If nothing's coming up for you, nothing's coming up for you. No big deal. Yeah. The way it's more collaborative and like, it doesn't feel like, you know, in like the trauma informed space, there's like this like saying or principle or whatever. I don't even know what it's called, but like the phrase is like power over and power under. Like I have no power over you and you're not underneath me. Like we are creating this
Right.
space together.
I feel like that's so important too, because I mean, I think with just even with any practitioner you want to go to for anything, whether it be a physician, a therapist, and whichever capacity, that trust is so important. I mean, that's how you're going to really get to the root of the issue, the thing, right? By just developing that trust. So I think, wow, that's fantastic.
So,
Yeah.
Alex, for those that don't know, can you explain a little bit what a trauma-informed practitioner does?
Yeah. I came to that through the yoga space. And, I feel like a little bit of what I mentioned before ties into this, but I want to like elaborate and expand on it. So autonomy is the big one. It's like you're at your own will and your needs are valid and you do what you got to do. Like take care of yourself. It's like, like that analogy of like you put your mask on first, like always, please, like you do you. And then consent. I think consent is a huge thing also, like having the conversation. And it's like, okay, I have this roadmap and this process that I use, and giving people the space to ask questions or interrupt me, or if you feel differently than I do, that's okay. If something doesn't resonate with you, that's okay. Take what works for you, leave the rest. And I kind of want to talk about like the yoga space, because in the yoga space, I feel like that's kind of like where all this originated from, and like me becoming this trauma informed practitioner. So obviously I can't talk to every single person. It's impossible for me to be like, it's like a 30-minute conversation with everybody if I'm trying to figure out what's going to make you comfortable, like how can we build trust, and all those things. So what I would do is I would ask everybody to get into child's pose. That's how I would mostly start my classes, in child's pose. And I would say, okay, you'll see me walking around the room, and if I feel like, I need to adjust you, it's simply like for your physical safety. If you do not want me to do that, if you do not want me to touch you in any way, just give me a little wave. Some people are like, fuck no, leave me alone.
Yeah.
And I'm on for that. Like, yes, I don't want to adjust you if you're not comfortable. And then I also give people like room to have that autonomy. I would say, this is your practice, it's your body, it's your mind. You know it better than I do. Just because I'm the yoga teacher doesn't mean I know your body more than you do. If you need to do something different, if you need to lie down, if you need to drink water, if you need to leave this room altogether in the middle of the class, please do. Like, listen to yourself and your body, take what you need. That is the yoga, like listening to yourself and listening to your intuition and what your body needs. And I think that's helpful for people. And I would never get offended. I've had like a lot of people walk out of the room. So which makes me think, like, I wonder how many times people want to leave the room and they just,
let me ask you,
like, they don't have permission to leave the room.
Well, and you know what? And that's the kind of space that you created. You created a space for that. Right. But I have to ask, like, how do you separate that this is for them and it was their choice to do that versus not taking it personal? Or I don't know, like, I would imagine for me, obviously it's easy for me to say this because I'm not a yoga practitioner,
right?
But how do you internalize that? How do you make sense of that? How do you not take offense to that or feel bad about it? Or
yeah, I mean, I think that's a practice in and of itself.
Sure.
And it's like, I feel like as a teacher, for me, it comes back to like, okay, great, they took what they needed. That's what they needed. That's my goal, to set that autonomy for them, and that's what they did. Awesome. Yeah. And also like other people's reactions or feelings or headspace is none of my fucking business. None of my business.
Yes. I love that. True. That, I mean, well, I think I'm going to be calling you after this. We're done with this episode to set up a session or something, because as it relates to that is what we make with that information and how we internalize that. And and exactly what you just said, that's got to be like so liberating to just be like, how they feel is, or that's not my business. It's they took what they wanted out of it. you were glad to be there to, to support and to give them that. And then that's it. That's the rest. Move on. I'm still working my way through that in life, how separating a lot, making that.
And I feel like maybe it's easier too, because it's like, I don't know them. Maybe if I knew them, it hurt a little bit, but.
Well, that is true. That is true. It's funny though, how I found myself caring more about what the stranger thinks. Yeah, especially if I'm in a place where I'm there to serve others, and I've certainly been in those positions before. So, wow. Okay. You mentioned even those little cues and just creating that space of autonomy. I mean, are there any other examples? I know we're going to talk about astrology next, but this could be maybe a segue in how you do that. How you bring that self-care piece for your clients. So let's talk about maybe during one-on-one sessions that you have with someone. If you feel like you could talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
There's in astrology, when I look at somebody's chart, and this is, any astrologer, when they look at somebody's, primarily what people look at is sun, moon, and rising. And, all of those things that kind of make up these characteristics of an individual. The moon itself probably connects the most to self-care. So that conversation just kind of unfolds between the client when we get a little bit deeper into talking about the moon in relationship to them. So it's it can get individualized, and then, we might build upon okay, given your moon in this sign and in this house. And when we do a little mini reading, people will know exactly what I'm talking about when I say all these things. It's these are all the ways that support you in your own physical and emotional needs. And then we can kind of elaborate a little bit on that. And if we want to develop a plan, we can develop a plan together, what's reasonable, given your life and your duties and responsibilities, what's reasonable.
So yeah, you gave us a history of how you developed this, and I have to ask, from the time that you began to where you're at now, what has been the most sort of the biggest things that you have learned as a practitioner, someone that what have been the big things that you have learned throughout this process?
Yeah. Do you mean in my personal life, or as it relates to my astrological practice?
You know what? How about both? For you, for yourself, and then in your practice.
Yeah.
If you don't mind talking about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So the things that work for me, and I feel like what works, when us as practitioners or space holders, what works for us, we kind of translate it into the work that we do with other people. And for me, it's both tapping into the physical realm, and also dialogue. This is very freeing for me, being able to be in dialogue with other people. It's healing for me. And also tapping into the intuitive space, what just comes through in the moment. I might have all these things planned and all these things ready, and this is what we're going to talk about. And there's always room for just things that just come up while that dialogue is happening, that I didn't expect to come up, that I'm oh, I didn't notice this when I was interpreting your chart, and I was preparing for this, oh, also this. And yoga, even though I don't incorporate the physical practice of yoga in astrology, yoga was helpful for me in giving me the space to process a lot of my own trauma. I mentioned, it still shows up pushing and pushing and pushing, like fight or flight. Even in my dreams, it was fight or flight. Like that's like all I was experiencing all the time. And I was able to like really witness that in the yoga practice. Okay, wait. I feel like I have to share the story.
That's fine. Please. Oh my gosh. Yes.
Trigger this memory.
Yes.
So my like trauma informed mentor, I've worked like on and off with her for many years. And a friend of mine was one of her students for quite some time. And she's like, oh, she does this chakra workshop and da da da. I'm like, oh, cool, a chakra workshop. Like, I want to go. It's 7 weeks long. And like, you learn about each of the chakras and how they relate to your life. And like, I even read the whole description and I was like, oh, I'm going to sign up. And, you know, I get there and then I'm like, oh, we're talking about trauma?
Ooh.
Like, we're talking about trauma and the chakras? Like, what? Like I did not know what I was getting myself into. And I think that was like my body and mind's way of like I read the description, but like I didn't process that it was that. And I think that if I had, I wouldn't have gone. And it's like, I'm actually glad that I did not like connect that, or my body didn't translate that, because then I wouldn't have gone and I wouldn't be where I am now. And I learned that tapping into my like physical body, I was like pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing, even in that, you know, like learning about trauma. I was processing my trauma like in a trauma state, if that makes sense.
Wow. Yeah.
Which is fine, because it's also what needed to happen. Like I needed to push and push and push and like push myself so much that I was like, I'm going to connect to my emotions and I'm going to feel my fucking feelings. Like, I'm like, fight, fight, fight.
Yep. That's right. Oh my gosh.
And if I'm going to cry, I'm really going to cry. Like I was just like heavy into, I think I must have cried for like 3 years straight, like every day, you know, but I needed it. And anyway, so the body, connecting with emotions, like trusting intuition, like the voice is so powerful. I mean, like, I don't know how, like, I feel like every therapy session I have, I'm like in tears. It's like, it just needs to come out, you know, and it needs to be processed. So yeah, I don't know. I think like all of that.
Oh man. Thank you for sharing that. I think that's because you know what? I think we all have a breaking point, or we have a point where we're like, this is the big aha moment for us, right? Yeah. Because I certainly, and I think many people will agree that when the pandemic happened, it changed everything for everyone, everything. And even for in whether it was loss or repressed, you know, trauma, etc. At some point it manifests in how your body feels, in how you are viewing, even the lens in which you're viewing the world changes because of that too, of just that repressed trauma. So I remember even kind of, and I've shared this with Paula before, and I shared it in our last episode, you know, a little bit of how just that physical sensation of where my body was just, I had just hit that rock bottom. Mm-hmm. And, you know, and you go and best thing I could have done was, of course, to see a therapist and to start my journey from there. And it keeps going and keeps going and keeps going and keeps going. But what it did to the body, like you said something like you just cried, you felt like you cried for 3 years. I'm like, that's exactly, and it was just such a cathartic experience. And I recall like, this is what it feels like to start healing. And it made me recognize those things immediately, and it made me see the world a little bit more different, you know, from the lens again of someone that's healing their inner child and as an adult. And just again, I think that's beautiful. You're doing beautiful work. I think, you know, I know I'm going to say wonderful a lot. I'm sure I can come up with something even better than that, but it's something that you don't realize how much you're carrying around in the world, in life, until you're like, it starts manifesting as a headache. It starts manifesting as you being irritable or not getting along with your partner or whatever. And it just comes to the surface. And then once you start addressing it, it's best way to say it again is just healing. You know, the healing begins, just puts you in a different place.
I think
So
we talked
I
about it
think,
in the last episode that it gets to a point where you don't deal with these things, you're always on survival mode. And it's just
oof, yeah,
until it
yeah, that
physically
fight or flight, that fight or flight, carrying it, like you said. Like for me, I carry a lot of it in my chest and in my stomach. Right there, they're like always fighting with each other. And so I was like, why am I feel like I'm having a heart attack? And it's not that. It's actually just a combination of the anxiety, time, lack of sleep, fight or flight, everything, you know. But yeah, that's I think what you're doing is I call those gifts, honestly, because not everyone can do that. Even people that are professional and have the degrees and everything, not everyone can do that like wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
So it shows that you care.
Oh, thank
Yeah. All right. So before we have a cry session here, let's just keep going. All right. So we're in the realm of astrology now. So we're talking about that. And I know, and thank you for sharing your story again. I think, you know, it's important to hear how we get to the places that we're at now, right? So let's dig into it. Let's dig into a reading. Okay, so I would ask you, so how does a reading go for someone? But maybe you can take, you know, you can use this time with us and do a reading on us and see
Yeah.
how does that look like? Like I've only had one reading in my life, and that was many years ago. So
Okay.
I'm pretty sure, and it was, I can guarantee you that that lady probably still has that place somewhere in Miami. It was with a neon sign and
Oh,
late
cool,
at
cool.
night. I remember going to see
One
her.
of those.
Yeah. That's a story in itself. Okay,
I believe it.
but it was interesting. I am a very open-minded person, and there were some things that at first I had like, you know, a little side eye there, but it resonated with me, and it still stuck with me to this day. And there's so many things about it that I have seen. Yeah, like let's talk us through it and share.
Yeah. So typically, like if somebody were to schedule a reading with me, I want to talk about that before we get into your
Yeah,
reading.
of course. Yeah.
Um, they would fill out a form. And then in that form, you know, your name, your contact, your pronouns, your birth data, and what if you have an inquiry or if there's anything you want me to focus on, what is it? And that way I have all that information and I can like put everything together, which we didn't really do, right? We're just kind of doing this a little on the fly.
Yeah.
Which is fine. But that's kind of like the preliminary work. And then, you know, when we start the reading, once we have kind of gone through like autonomy and consent, like how I've mentioned all that before, and like what is this reading going to look like? I'm going to pause. I'm going to ask you questions. You can interrupt me. All those things. I also like to confirm the person's birth data, just so that it's like even though you sent it to me, let's like still have like that verbal, okay, this is all accurate. Okay, great. Here we go. Like, you know, I always like to start with a meditation. So we can do a meditation or we can skip the meditation and we can jump right into it. Whatever you both want. It's up to you.
Let's do the meditation. Let's have the experience. Yes, I would love that. What an awesome day. I love this. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So you can find a position that feels comfortable for you, whether your legs are on the ground or you crisscross your legs on the chair. You can move around or close or open your eyes at any point throughout the meditation. Just take a moment to connect with your mind and anything that may be present for you. And then bring your awareness to your breath. And just notice how you may have changed your breath a little bit once you started to focus on it. And then bring your awareness to your seat. The base of your spine, your legs, the parts of your body that are your foundation, that are holding you up and providing stability for you. And just notice how perhaps those parts of your body may feel a little more dense or solid. And from those parts of your body, imagine that you have roots that are growing and extending downwards. And as those roots grow and extend downwards through the floor, through the concrete, through the soil, connect with gravity and how gravity is magnetic and pulling your body down. Allow those roots to work with gravity to continue to grow downwards and outwards. Imagining that these roots are extending towards the places and spaces of all of your ancestors, whether they are physically with us or not. And that these roots extend to all of your teachers and guides and mentors. And as those roots continue to grow outwards and extend and grow deeper down, allow that to be a sense of solidity and rootedness. And from that rooted and solid place, imagine that you are pulling energy from these roots wherever you sent them to all your ancestors and teachers, and that wisdom that's been offered to you is pulling into your roots and up into your body. And feel that energy from beneath the soil rise up into your body and up towards the crown of your head. Imagining the crown of your head opening and a golden light pouring upwards and outwards, and even further outwards towards all the planets within our solar system. Connecting with this light and allowing the energetic wisdom of these celestial bodies to pour through the light and back into the crown of your head and into your body. And allow the wisdom of these planets, of your ancestors and teachers, and your own physical body to meet right at your core, at that space right between your navel and your rib cage. And allow this energy to be present for you and to guide you throughout our experience together. And then take a deep breath in through your nose. And a full breath out through your mouth. And gently drop your chin in towards your chest. And open your eyes. And make your way back into this space.
Why do I feel like I just took like the best like nap? It's like I feel refreshed. Wow. Never doubt it. Never underestimate the power of meditation. It was nice. Gosh. Yeah.
Sure enough.
Damn. Damn.
How are you doing, Paula?
Yeah, Paula. I had a little tear already pulling up right here. Yeah. Oh, wow.
I felt that.
Yeah.
I really did.
So, who should I start with?
Let's start with Paula.
And I have been volunteered. Okay.
Yes.
And that's where we'll pause our conversation for today. But don't stray too far. This journey is just getting started. In our next episode, dropping August 19th, we'll dive into astrology readings for both Paula and Christian, starting with Paula. It's a continuation you won't want to miss as we explore what the stars have in store for our hosts. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and join us as we continue the celestial journey together. See you on August 19th for part 2.